The history of chess can be described as the long development of a board game that moved across languages, religions, courts, empires, cities, schools, clubs, newspapers, computers, and online platforms. Its form changed several times, but its central idea remained stable. Two opposing sides use different pieces with different powers on a square board, and the final goal is to trap the opposing king. The game is therefore not only a recreational activity, but also a historical object. It shows how cultures exchanged ideas, how rule systems became standardized, how intellectual competition became organized, and how a game that once belonged mainly to courts and educated circles became a global mass activity. The earliest roots of chess are usually connected with northern India. Around the 6th century, a game known as Chaturanga appears to have been played in the region. Chaturanga was not identical with modern chess, but it already contained important structural elements. A board divided into squares, opposing armies, a king-like piece, different classes of pieces, and a military imagination behind the game. The term Chaturanga can be understood as referring to 4 divisions of an army, commonly associated with infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariots. This military image is important because early chess was not originally presented as an abstract puzzle in the modern sense. It was connected with ideas of command, planning, formation, and conflict. The board used in early chess-related games was probably related to the older Indian Ashtapada board, an 8x8 square board. The use of 64 squares became one of the most stable features in the later history of chess. Even when the names, powers, and cultural meanings of pieces changed, the square battlefield remained. This stability helped the game travel, because it provided a clear structure that could be adapted without losing its identity. At the same time, the early form of the game was slower than modern chess. The pieces had more limited movement, and the queen and bishop, as they are known today, did not yet possess their later power. From India, the game moved into Persia. This transfer was decisive, because many later chess terms came through Persian and Arabic forms. In Persia, the game was known as Shatranj, a word derived from earlier Indian terminology. The king was called Shah, and the expression connected with the defeat of the king became associated with the later term checkmate. Although the exact linguistic development is complex, the Persian phase clearly shaped the vocabulary and symbolism of chess. The game became linked with courtly education, strategic thinking, and elite culture. It was a game of discipline, memory, calculation, and controlled aggression. The Persian tradition also contributed to the literary and intellectual image of chess. Chess was not only played, it was described, admired, and used as a metaphor. The board could represent a battlefield, a court, a kingdom, or human fate. This metaphorical function became very important in later centuries. A chessboard could be used to discuss wisdom, power, morality, social order, or the unpredictability of life. The game, therefore, developed a double identity early on. It was at once a concrete game with rules and a symbolic model for larger questions of politics and human behavior. After the Arab conquest of Persia in the 7th century, Shatranj entered the Islamic world. This was one of the most important stages in the spread of the game. Across the Abbasid Caliphate and other Islamic societies, chess became known, studied, and refined. It was played in courts, intellectual circles, and urban environments. Muslim scholars and players wrote about chess problems, openings, endgames, and famous players. The game was transmitted across a wide geographical area, including the Middle East, North Africa, and eventually parts of Spain and Sicily. These regions later became bridges through which chess entered medieval Europe. In the Islamic world, chess was often treated as an intellectual discipline. Strong players were admired for their calculation and memory. Chess problems were composed and preserved. These problems were not always practical positions from real games. They were often artistic or instructional constructions. They trained the eye to recognize patterns, mating nets, and tactical possibilities. This problem tradition later influenced European chess culture, where composed chess positions became an important branch of the game. The idea that chess could be studied outside direct play was already present in this period. The pieces of Chaturanga differed from modern chess in important ways. The piece that later became the queen was called the Firzan, or advisor, and moved only one square diagonally. The piece that later became the bishop was associated with the elephant, and moved in a restricted jumping pattern. Pawns moved forward and promoted, but promotion was limited. There was no modern castling in the present sense. Because the long-range power of pieces was limited, Chaturanga games were often slower and more positional. A player needed patience, formation, and careful maneuvering. Direct attacks existed, but the explosive tactical style of later European chess was less common. Chess entered Europe gradually. The exact paths were multiple. It came through Islamic Spain, through contact in Sicily and southern Italy, through trade routes, through diplomatic exchanges, and through the Crusades. By the 11th and 12th centuries, chess was known in many parts of Europe. It became part of aristocratic culture and courtly education. A noble person was expected to know games, manners, poetry, warfare, and strategy. Chess fitted this world well because it combined leisure with discipline. It could be played in a hall, a monastery, a court, or a private household. In medieval Europe, the names and meanings of the chess pieces were adapted to local social structures. The Indian and Persian army became, in many places, a model of medieval society. The king remained central. The advisor became the queen, reflecting the social and symbolic importance of queenship in European courts. The elephant became the bishop in many Western European traditions, while other regions used different names and interpretations. The chariot became the rook or tower. The horse remained the knight. The pawn represented the foot soldier or common person. Through these changes, chess became a mirror of the society that played it. The medieval Christian church had an ambivalent relationship with chess. At times, clerical authorities criticized or restricted the game, especially when it was associated with gambling, idleness, or excessive passion. At other times, moral writers used chess as an educational image. The chessboard became a way to explain social order. Every piece had a role, every rank had a function, and the fate of the kingdom depended on correct conduct. Texts such as moralized chess treatises presented the game as a lesson in ethics and hierarchy. In this sense, chess became part of medieval didactic culture. During the medieval period, chess was still slower than the modern game. The queen and bishop were weak compared with their later forms. Games could take a long time before direct conflict emerged. The concept of checkmate was central, but stalemate, pawn promotion, and other technical details varied across regions. The rules were not fully standardized. Local customs mattered. A game played in one region could differ from a game played elsewhere. This lack of uniformity is typical for medieval games, because rules often spread through practice rather than through universal written authorities. A major transformation occurred in Europe in the late 15th century. The rules of chess changed in a way that made the game faster, sharper, and closer to the modern form. The queen became the most powerful piece, able to move any number of squares along ranks, files, and diagonals. The bishop also became a long-range diagonal piece. These two changes greatly increased the attacking potential of the game. A position could now change dramatically in a few moves. Open lines, diagonals, and quick assaults became more important. This new form of chess is sometimes described as the birth of modern chess. The strengthening of the queen was especially significant. It changed both the mechanics and the symbolism of the game. Mechanically, it gave players a powerful attacking and defensive piece. Symbolically, it reflected the presence of strong queens and female rulers in late medieval and early modern Europe. Although the exact relationship between rule change and political symbolism should not be simplified too much. What can be documented clearly is that the queen's new power made chess more dynamic. The old advisor became a commanding force, and the entire balance of the board changed. The new rules required new forms of knowledge. Older Chaturanga patterns no longer explained the game sufficiently. Players had to learn openings, attacks, sacrifices, and tactical combinations under the new conditions. The faster game encouraged printed manuals. The rise of printing in Europe helped spread chess knowledge more widely. Books could record openings, games, problems, and advice. This was a major step in the development of chess theory. The game was no longer transmitted only by direct play and oral instruction. It became a written and reproducible subject. One of the important early printed works on modern chess was associated with Luis Ramirez de Lucena in the late 15th century. Later authors such as Pedro Damiano and Ruy Lopez contributed to the development of opening knowledge and practical instruction. Ruy Lopez gave his name to one of the most enduring openings in chess history, although the opening itself evolved over time. These early writers did not create modern theory in the full contemporary sense, but they began the process of documenting positions, principles, and recurring patterns. Chess was becoming a teachable discipline. The 16th and 17th centuries saw chess develop as a European intellectual pastime. Strong players became known beyond their immediate circles. Courts and cities hosted matches. Italian and Spanish players were especially influential during parts of this period. The game still lacked a single international organization, and travel was difficult, but chess culture was becoming increasingly connected. Players learned from books, correspondence, and personal encounters. The idea of chess mastery became more visible. A strong chess player was not just lucky or clever. He possessed a recognizable form of expertise. During this early modern period, chess was often connected with calculation, memory, and wit. It was also connected with social status. To play chess well suggested education and refinement. At the same time, The game began to move beyond aristocratic courts into coffeehouses, clubs, and urban public life. This shift was gradual, but it was important. Chess became part of the emerging culture of conversation and public sociability. People gathered to read newspapers, discuss politics, drink coffee, and play games. In this environment, chess became more public, more competitive, and more observable. In the 18th century, the coffeehouse became one of the central institutions of chess culture. Paris was especially important. The Café de la Régence became a famous chess location where strong players, writers, philosophers, and visitors gathered. François-André Danicon-Philidor was the most important chess figure of this period. He was also a musician, and his analytical approach to chess became highly influential. Philidor emphasized the importance of pawns and famously treated pawn structure as a key element of the game. His work represented an early step toward positional understanding. Philidor's contribution was not limited to individual games. He helped show that chess could be understood through general principles: the movement of pawns, the creation of strong and weak squares, the value of coordinated pieces, and the long-term character of positions became objects of analysis. This was a different kind of chess thinking from purely tactical calculation. It did not replace tactics, but it added depth. The game became increasingly documented as a system in which short-term threats and long-term structures had to be considered together. The 19th century changed chess profoundly. Industrialization, urbanization, newspapers, railways, and international travel created new conditions for competitive play. Chess clubs were founded in many cities. Periodicals printed games and problems. Matches and tournaments attracted attention. Players could become famous across national borders. The game was gradually moving toward organized sport, even though it still retained the atmosphere of intellectual art and gentlemanly competition. This century created many of the institutions that would shape modern chess. The Romantic era of chess is often associated with bold attacks, sacrifices, open games, and a preference for beauty and initiative. Players such as Adolf Anderssen and Paul Morphy became symbols of this style. The famous Immortal game, played by Anderssen, is remembered as an example of spectacular sacrificial play. Morphy, from the United States, was particularly important because he combined tactical brilliance with rapid development, central control, and practical clarity. His games showed that romantic attack worked best when supported by sound principles. Paul Morphy's brief career had a lasting influence. He defeated many of the strongest European players of his time and demonstrated a level of understanding that later generations admired. Morphy developed his pieces quickly, opened lines, used time efficiently, and punished opponents who neglected development. Although he is often placed within the Romantic era, his play also anticipated modern principles. He showed that beautiful attacks were not random acts of imagination. They were usually based on better coordination, superior development, and precise calculation. The first international chess tournament was held in London in 1851. This event was a milestone because it demonstrated that chess competition could be organized beyond private matches. Tournaments created rankings, reputations, and public narratives. They also required schedules, rules, pairings, and reporting. As tournament chess grew, the need for standardization increased. Players from different countries needed common rules. The clock, notation, and tournament formats became increasingly important. Chess was becoming a public competitive system. The chess clock was one of the most important practical innovations of the 19th century. Earlier games could be extremely long, and players could think for unlimited periods. This made competition difficult and sometimes unfair. Time controls introduced a new dimension. A player now had to manage not only position and material, but also time. The clock made tournaments more practical and changed chess psychology. Pressure, speed, and decision-making under constraints became part of the game. Modern competitive chess cannot be separated from this development. The late 19th century also produced a major theoretical change through Wilhelm Steinitz. Steinitz is generally recognized as the first official world chess champion after his match victory over Johannes Zukertort in 1886. More importantly, he developed a new way of understanding chess. He argued that attacks should be based on positional advantages, not launched simply because a player desired them. Accumulated small advantages, pawn structure, king safety, strong squares, and piece coordination became central concepts. Steinitz helped move chess from romantic intuition toward systematic positional theory. Steinitz's ideas were controversial at first because they challenged the older attacking style. Many players valued direct assault and sacrifice as the highest expression of chess. Steinitz did not reject attack, but he placed it within a broader logic. A correct attack had to be justified by the position. If a player had no advantage, premature attack could become weakness. This principle changed chess education. It encouraged players to ask why a move was justified, what a position demanded, and how advantages could be transformed. Modern chess analysis still reflects this approach. After Steinitz, Emanuel Lasker became world champion and held the title for 27 years. Lasker's style has often been described as practical and psychological. He was not only a chess player, but also a mathematician and philosopher. His games show flexibility, resilience, and an ability to create difficult problems for opponents. Lasker's long reign helped strengthen the idea of the world champion as a central figure in chess history. The title became not only a sporting achievement, but also a symbol of intellectual authority. The early 20th century brought new champions and new styles. José Raúl Capablanca from Cuba became known for clarity, natural harmony, and exceptional endgame skill. His play often appeared simple, but the simplicity came from deep understanding. Capablanca's games demonstrated the power of piece activity, clean structures, and technical conversion. Alexander Alekhine, who later defeated Capablanca, represented a more dynamic and complex approach. Alekhine was known for attacking imagination, preparation, and tactical depth. The contrast between Capablanca and Alekhine became one of the classic stylistic contrasts in chess history. The opening phase of the game became increasingly important in the 20th century. Earlier players studied openings, but modern tournament practice required deeper preparation. Printed magazines, tournament books, and later databases made it possible to compare many games. Openings acquired names, variations, sub-variations, and theoretical debates. The opening was no longer only a way to reach a playable position, it became a field of research. A prepared player could enter a game with a specific strategic plan, and sometimes with detailed knowledge extending many moves into the position. The founding of the International Chess Federation, FIDE, in 1924 marked another step toward global organization. FIDE gradually became responsible for international rules, titles, ratings, Olympiads, and world championship structures. Its authority developed over time and was not immediately complete. For many years, world championship matches were still arranged through private negotiations and financial conditions. Nevertheless, the creation of FIDE reflected the need for an international institution. Chess had become too global and too organized to remain dependent only on personal arrangements between leading players. Women's chess also developed as an organized field in the 20th century. Vera Menchik became the first women's world chess champion and dominated women's chess in the early decades of the title. Her strength was widely recognized, and she competed successfully in many events with male players. The separate women's title reflected both opportunity and limitation. It created visibility and a structure for women competitors, but it also showed that the broader chess world was still shaped by gender barriers. The history of chess cannot be documented accurately without recognizing these institutional divisions. The Soviet Union became the dominant chess power in the 20th century. After the Russian Revolution, and especially under Soviet cultural policy, chess was promoted as an intellectual and ideological activity. It was seen as a discipline that developed logic, concentration, and strategic thought. Schools, clubs, publications, trainers, and state-supported systems helped create a large base of players. Chess success became a matter of national prestige. The Soviet chess school combined mass participation with elite training. This system produced many world-class players and world champions. Mikhail Botvinnik was central to Soviet chess dominance. He became world champion in 1948 and represented a scientific approach to preparation. Botvinnik emphasized analysis, physical discipline, opening preparation, and systematic work. He also influenced later generations as a trainer and organizer. Under his model, chess became a field of planned development. Talent was important, but talent had to be trained through method. The Soviet approach treated chess almost as a research discipline. Games were analyzed, openings were prepared collectively, weaknesses were identified, and improvement was structured. The World Championship after 1948 became more formalized through FIDE, a cycle of zonal tournaments, interzonal tournaments, candidates events, and championship matches created a pathway to the title. This system gave chess a more regulated competitive structure. It also produced intense rivalries. Players such as Vasily Smyslov, Mikhail Tal, Tigran Petrosian, Boris Spassky, and others represented different styles within the Soviet and international elite. Smyslov was known for harmony and endgame skill. Tal became famous for daring attacks and complications. Petrosian was associated with prophylaxis and defensive mastery. Spassky combined universal style with practical strength. The 1972 World Championship match between Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky became one of the most famous events in chess history. It took place during the Cold War and was widely interpreted as a symbolic contest between the United States and the Soviet Union. Fischer had risen through extraordinary individual effort and had challenged Soviet dominance with remarkable results. His preparation, opening knowledge, tactical power, and will to win made him one of the strongest players in history. The match in Reykjavik attracted global attention far beyond the normal chess audience. Fischer's victory changed the public image of chess, especially in the United States and Western media. Chess became front-page news. Many people who had never followed the game became aware of it. The match also showed how chess could become entangled with politics, psychology, media pressure, and personal conflict. Fischer's later withdrawal from official competition added to the myth around him. His career became both a story of genius and a cautionary example of isolation, conflict, and instability. In documentation of chess history, Fischer remains a turning point because of both his sporting achievement and his cultural impact. After Fischer, Anatoly Karpov became world champion. Karpov's style was precise, positional, and technically controlled. He often won by restricting opponents, improving small advantages, and avoiding unnecessary risk. His games showed the power of quiet pressure. Karpov's reign represented a return to Soviet dominance, but it also introduced a distinctive form of practical perfection. He did not need constant tactical fireworks. He could make an opponent's position gradually worse until resistance became impossible. The rivalry between Karpov and Garry Kasparov became one of the defining chess narratives of the late 20th century. Their matches were long, intense, and theoretically important. Kasparov brought dynamic opening preparation, tactical energy, and a modern understanding of initiative. Karpov brought experience, positional control, and defensive resilience. Their confrontation was not only a contest between two players, but also between two styles and two generations. The matches produced an enormous body of analysis and influenced opening theory for decades. Kasparov became world champion in 1985 and remained the dominant figure in world chess for many years. He represented a new type of professional chess preparation. Opening laboratories, seconds, deep analysis, and psychological preparation became essential at the highest level. Kasparov's games often showed dynamic imbalance, material sacrifices, initiative, central tension, and long-prepared variations. He also became an important public figure, writing, organizing, and later engaging in political activity. His career belongs to both traditional chess history and the beginning of the computer age. Computers entered chess gradually. Early computer chess programs were weak by human standards, but they demonstrated that chess could be translated into algorithms. A computer could generate moves, evaluate positions, and search variations. The main challenge was complexity. The number of possible chess positions is enormous, and brute force alone was not enough in early decades. Programmers had to build evaluation functions that gave numerical meaning to material, king safety, pawn structure, mobility, and other factors. Computer chess therefore became a meeting point between mathematics, engineering, artificial intelligence, and game theory. By the late 20th century, computers had become strong enough to challenge elite human players. The most famous moment came in 1997, when IBM's Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov in a match. This result became a landmark in the history of artificial intelligence and public understanding of computers. It did not mean that computers understood chess in a human way, but it showed that machine calculation and evaluation could defeat the strongest human player under match conditions. For chess, it marked the end of an era in which human intuition was unquestionably superior over the board. The rise of chess engines changed training and analysis. Players could test their ideas against machines, check tactical accuracy, and discover resources that earlier generations might have missed. Engine analysis reduced the authority of purely human opinion. A move once praised in a book could be challenged by later computer evaluation. At the same time, engines created new problems. Over-reliance on computer lines could weaken human explanation. A machine might show the best move without making the underlying idea easy to understand. Chess education, therefore, had to balance engine accuracy with human clarity. The Internet transformed chess culture even more widely. Online chess platforms made it possible to play opponents from anywhere in the world at any time. Blitz, bullet, rapid correspondence-style games, puzzles, lessons, streams, and databases became available to large audiences. The Internet reduced barriers to participation. A player no longer needed a local club to find regular games. This changed the social structure of chess. Clubs remained important, but online platforms became the daily environment for many players. Chess became faster, more visible, and more connected. Online chess also changed spectatorship. In earlier periods, chess spectators followed printed game scores or watched tournament halls. In the digital period, games could be broadcast live with commentary, engine evaluations, chat, and visual boards. Streamers and educators made chess more accessible to beginners. The personality of the commentator became part of the experience. Chess moved into the world of digital entertainment without losing its competitive seriousness. This widened the audience and created new forms of chess culture. The development of AlphaZero in the late 2000s introduced another important stage in computer chess. Unlike traditional engines that relied heavily on handcrafted evaluation features, AlphaZero used self-play and machine learning techniques to develop its strength. Its games against leading engines attracted attention because of their dynamic style, long-term sacrifices, and unusual strategic choices. AlphaZero did not replace all traditional engines, but it influenced how players and analysts thought about initiative, space, piece activity, and long-term compensation. It showed that machine chess could also produce ideas that appeared creative to human observers. Modern, top-level chess is shaped by engines, databases, physical preparation, psychological stability, and opening research. Elite players must know enormous amounts of theory, but they must also be able to play original positions. Because many opening lines are deeply analyzed, players often try to create practical problems rather than seek a purely objective advantage. Surprise, move order, psychological pressure, and time management remain important. The human element has not disappeared. Even with perfect analysis available before and after games, the player must still make decisions under pressure. Magnus Carlsen's career illustrates several features of contemporary chess. He became world champion in 2013 and was known for universal strength, endgame technique, practical pressure, and the ability to win equal or nearly equal positions. Carlsen's dominance was not based only on opening preparation. he often avoided the most heavily analyzed theoretical battles and instead aimed for playable positions in which he could outplay opponents. This approach showed that in the engine age, human skill still matters deeply. Understanding, patience, stamina, and practical decision-making remain decisive. The modern world championship system has continued to evolve and sometimes produce debate. Questions about match formats, candidate qualification, rapid and blitz tiebreaks, rating systems, and the role of the classical title remain part of current chess culture. The World Championship is still prestigious, but chess identity is now broader than a single title. Rapid chess, blitz chess, online championships, team events, and content-based chess communities all contribute to the public image of the game. Chess has become more plural than in earlier periods. The rules of chess are now highly standardized, but small historical layers remain visible. Castling, en passant, promotion, stalemate, the 50-move rule, threefold repetition, and time controls all reflect the gradual attempt to manage fairness, clarity, and practical play. These rules were not created all at once. They emerged from centuries of adjustment. Modern chess feels stable because international regulation has fixed the rule set, but historically the game was flexible. Its present form is the result of many decisions, customs, disputes, and compromises. Chess notation is another important documentary tool. Without notation, chess history would be much harder to reconstruct. Recording moves made it possible to preserve games, study past masters, publish analysis, and create theory. Descriptive notation was used for a long time in English-language chess literature, while algebraic notation later became the international standard. The ability to write down a game transformed chess from a temporary event into a permanent record. A game could be replayed years or centuries later. In this sense, notation gave chess a historical memory. Chess problems and studies form a parallel history to competitive chess. A chess problem is usually a composed position with a specific task, often checkmate in a set number of moves. An endgame study is a composed position that demonstrates a beautiful or instructive solution, often involving surprising resources. These forms show the artistic side of chess. They are not always about practical tournament play. They document how chess can be used to create beauty, paradox, and precision. The history of chess is therefore also a history of composition. Educational uses of chess have also been significant. Chess has often been promoted as a tool for concentration, planning, memory, patience, and logical thinking. Schools and youth programs in many countries use chess as an educational activity. The benefits should not be overstated in a simplistic way, but chess clearly provides a structured environment for decision-making and consequence. A child who plays chess learns that every move changes the position, that impulsive action can have costs, and that planning must adapt to the opponent's choices. This educational appeal has helped chess survive across centuries. Chess has also carried social meanings. In some periods, it was a marker of elite culture. In others, it became a popular club activity. It has been used as a symbol of intelligence, strategy, masculinity, discipline, politics, and artistic imagination. These meanings have changed over time. The same board could appear in a royal court, a prison, a school, a cafe, a military metaphor, a computer laboratory, or a mobile phone app. Chess survived because it could be reinterpreted without losing its core structure. The global spread of chess has produced regional traditions. Russia and the former Soviet states developed deep institutional chess cultures. India, connected with the game's early roots, has become a major modern chess power, especially after the rise of Viswanathan Anand and later generations of young grandmasters. China developed strong chess programs and produced elite players in both open and women's chess. The United States, Western Europe, Iran, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Georgia, and many other regions have contributed major players and traditions. Modern chess is genuinely international. The title of Grandmaster became one of the central markers of chess strength. Awarded under international structures, it represents elite achievement. Below it are other titles and rating categories that help classify players. The ELO rating system gave chess a numerical method for estimating playing strength. Ratings changed how players, tournaments, and federations evaluated performance. They also made progress measurable. A player could compare results over time and across countries. This statistical layer became part of modern chess identity. Cheating and fair play have become increasingly important issues in the digital and engine age. In earlier periods, unfair assistance was possible, but limited by practical conditions. With powerful engines available on phones and computers, the risk changed. Online platforms and tournament organizers developed anti-cheating systems, delay rules, monitoring procedures, and statistical checks. This is now part of chess administration. The same technology that improves training also creates new ethical and regulatory challenges. The material culture of chess also has a history. Boards and pieces have been made from wood, ivory, bone, stone, metal, plastic, glass, and digital pixels. The Staunton chess set, introduced in the 19th century, became the standard design for tournament play because it was clear, practical, and easily recognizable. Standardized pieces helped reduce confusion in competitive settings. Before standardization, chess sets could be highly decorative, but not always easy to read. The modern tournament set reflects the need for clarity and function. Chess literature is another major part of the game's development. Manuals, tournament books, biographies, opening encyclopedias, endgame textbooks, puzzle collections, and databases have shaped how players learn. Each period produced its own teaching style. Older books often used verbal principles and selected examples. Later books used deeper analysis and structured training. Digital databases now allow players to search millions of games instantly. The amount of available information has grown enormously, but the central problem remains the same. A player must transform information into understanding. The history of openings shows how chess knowledge accumulates. Openings such as the Ruy Lopez, Italian game, Sicilian defense, French defense, Queen's Gambit, King's Indian defense, and many others carry centuries of analysis. Some openings rise and fall in popularity depending on new ideas, engine discoveries, and elite fashion. An opening is not just a sequence of moves. It is a documented tradition of plans, structures, risks, and typical endings. Learning an opening means entering a historical conversation. Endgame theory represents another long-term accumulation of knowledge. basic mates, pawn endings, rook endings, opposite-colored bishop endings, and queen endings have been studied for generations. Table bases, which calculate perfect play in positions with a limited number of pieces, have changed endgame understanding dramatically. They sometimes reveal moves that are difficult for humans to understand. Yet practical endgame skill still depends on patterns, technique, and judgment. The endgame remains the phase where small differences in knowledge and patience often decide the result. Chess strategy has developed through recurring concepts: control of the center, king safety, development, pawn structure, open files, weak squares, outposts, space, initiative, material imbalance, prophylaxis, and coordination are now standard terms. These concepts were not all present from the beginning. They emerged through practice, analysis, and teaching. The history of chess can therefore be read as a history of concepts. Players did not merely make better moves over time. They developed better language for explaining why moves were good. The cultural image of chess has often exaggerated the idea of pure intelligence. Strong chess players do require memory, calculation, pattern recognition, emotional control, and disciplined study. However, chess strength is not the same as general intelligence. It is a specialized skill developed through experience and training. Historical documentation shows that mastery depends on institutions, teachers, books, opponents, time, and motivation. Genius matters, but it develops inside a culture of practice. Chess has repeatedly adapted to new media. Manuscripts preserved problems. Printed books spread openings. Newspapers popularized games. Telegraph and correspondence chess allowed play across distance. Radio and television occasionally brought chess to wider audiences. Computers transformed analysis. The internet transformed access and speed. Streaming transformed spectatorship. Each medium changed how people encountered the game. The board remained the same, but the surrounding environment changed continuously. The COVID-19 pandemic period gave online chess an additional surge. With many over-the-board events limited or cancelled, online play, streaming, and digital tournaments became more prominent. Popular culture also contributed to renewed interest in chess, especially through television and online media. Many new players discovered the game through apps and videos, rather than through clubs or books. This accelerated a trend that had already begun. Chess became part of everyday digital culture. Despite all technological change, over-the-board chess remains important. Sitting across from an opponent creates a different psychological and physical experience from online play. The board, the clock, the silence, the presence of the opponent, and the tournament hall all shape decision-making. Classical chess in particular depends on sustained concentration. The live game remains the historical core from which other formats developed. Digital chess has expanded the game, but it has not replaced the traditional encounter. The history of chess is therefore not a straight line from primitive to advanced. It is a sequence of adaptations. The game began as a representation of military conflict, became a courtly and intellectual activity, entered religious and moral literature, changed its rules in Europe, became a printed subject, developed clubs and tournaments, created champions and theory, became a national prestige project, entered the computer age, and finally became a global online culture. At every stage, the game kept enough continuity to remain recognizable and changed enough to remain alive. Today, chess stands at the intersection of tradition and technology. The board still has 64 squares. The pieces still begin from fixed starting positions. The goal is still checkmate. Yet the way people learn, watch, analyze, and discuss chess has changed more in the last few decades than in many previous centuries. A beginner can now access lessons, engines, puzzles, databases, and grandmaster games instantly. This access creates opportunity, but it also creates overload. The modern player must learn not only chess, but also how to manage chess information. The long history of chess shows why the game has remained durable. Its rules are simple enough to learn, but its possibilities are too large to exhaust. It allows direct competition, quiet study, artistic composition, mathematical analysis, psychological struggle, and cultural symbolism. It can be played by children and world champions, in silence or online before thousands of viewers. Its historical strength lies in this combination of stability and openness. Chess has changed with the societies that carried it, and for that reason, it continues to be both an old game and a modern one.